Mara Venn had brushed for 46 seconds when the buyer complained. The complaint came through the brass tube above the washstand as a polite chime, then a clerk's voice made tinny by distance. Proxy Venn, result disputed. Buyer reports grit behind the left back molar. Mara kept the brush in her mouth. The mint paste had gone sharp. A thread of blood ran along her lower gum, warm enough to feel through the foam. In the mirror, her brass proxy tag glowed blue at her throat. The light meant the contract was open, and the result was still transferring. Somewhere on the upper floor, Mr. Havel Pike sat in a clean chair with a bib around his neck, tasting nothing, doing nothing, and waiting for her hand to finish his morning. Mara spat. Pink foam hit the basin. The basin stamped the color, volume, and compliance quality onto a paper strip. It was a very civic basin. "Tell Mr. Pike," Mara said, "that if he wants less grit, he can try owning fewer teeth." The clerk did not laugh. Market clerks were trained against laughter, pity, and other delays. "Buyer has paid for full dental freshness, category H12, standard mouthfeel, no exclusions. He's got a bridge on the left side. The buyer has not disclosed a bridge. Then either the buyer lied, or I have invented a bridge with my tongue. Bill him extra for art." The woman at the next washstand made a wet sound that might have been a laugh. She was halfway through a breakfast assignment. 2 boiled eggs, 4 heels of bread, and a cup of thick black coffee. Her buyer was probably already pushing away from a table upstairs, satisfied and spotless, while she chewed with the gray focus of a person who had stopped believing food was personal. The clerk's tube clicked. "Repeat left back quadrant. Failure to complete reduces payment by 20%. There it was. Not anger, not threat. Arithmetic. Mara rinsed the brush, set the bristles against her own teeth, and started again. The blue light warmed against her collarbone. Every stroke dragged the seal tighter. The market did not move the brush for her. It did not open Mr. Pike's mouth or hers. It simply made results loyal to whoever had paid for them. If Mara brushed under seal, Pike's teeth came clean. If her gum tore, that part stayed with her. The law called this elegant. By the ledger, the law had never had to floss another man's molars before breakfast. She counted to 30 because counting kept her hands steady. At 12, her jaw cramped. At 19, the woman beside her gagged on the 4th heel of bread. At 26, a man behind them finished a stair-climbing assignment and collapsed onto the wooden bench, breathing hard for a buyer who had probably just arrived at an office 3 flights up without a bead of sweat. At 30, Mara spat again. The basin stamped a new strip. This one read, "Acceptable." "Payment released," the clerk said. 9 marks clicked into Mara's wrist ledger. 7 after stall fee, 6 after brush rental, 5.5 after market preservation tithe, because apparently the market needed preserving from the people doing the preserving. Mara tore the paper strip free and pressed it against the brass rail. The rail swallowed it with a satisfied little tick. Mr. Havel Pike's dental freshness was complete. Mara's mouth tasted like metal. She left the washroom with her head down and her coat collar up, passing the category board where the morning assignments rolled in neat columns. Sleep, light, 4 marks per hour. Hunger, breakfast, 6 to 11 marks. Exercise, stairs, 3 marks per flight. Hygiene, dental, dispute rate high. Sickness, common cold, surge pricing. Someone had chalked market rot under the sickness board. A clerk had crossed it out with 2 careful lines, which made it easier to read. Mara considered 1 hour of light sleep. 4 marks minus fees. Not worth losing the hour. She considered breakfast, but her stomach already hated the smell of eggs from the next stall. She considered stairs until the man on the bench coughed and held his ribs. The 9th bell rang from the hall roof. Nico needed to be at school before the 10th. Mara needed to be home before he decided to make breakfast himself, which usually meant burning something cheap enough that they could not afford to replace it. She signed out with the door clerk, who glanced at the pink along her lower lip. Dental dispute? Moral dispute, Mara said. The clerk's pen paused. That is not a category. Give it time. Outside, Merrow had settled into its usual weather. Rain too thin for a hood and too persistent for dignity. The proxy hall rose behind her in brass and gray stone, all clean steps and official windows, as if anything inside could be made decent by polishing the handles. Buyers entered by the front arch. Proxies used the side door, where the gutter leaked onto the third step. Mara stepped around the leak. Her shoes were too old to take on anyone else's water for free. The walk home took 12 minutes if she did not stop, 14 if the river wind pushed back. She made it in 13 and found Nico at the kitchen table, trying to slice bread with a mending knife. That knife is for cuffs, Mara said. Nico looked up. He was 15, narrow as a rail, and wearing his school jacket even though one sleeve ended half an inch above his wrist. He had a pencil tucked behind his ear and flour on his cheek, which meant he had attempted something ambitious and dry. Bread has edges, he said. Cuffs have edges. I adapted. That's not adaptation. That's evidence. She took the knife before he could argue and saw his eyes catch on her mouth. Mara turned toward the basin. Don't start. You are bleeding. I said don't start. You said it after you started bleeding. The order is important. She rinsed her mouth. The water went pink, then pale. Nico came to stand in the doorway, pretending he was not watching closely. He had their mother's talent for pretending badly. Dental? He asked. H12, again? People with good teeth are very anxious about them. Were they his teeth or yours? Mara splashed the basin clean. His result, my morning. Nico leaned one shoulder into the frame. That sounds like a sentence they put on posters so no one thinks about it. You are late. I am changing the subject first. No, you are not. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded cream notice. Mara knew the paper before he opened it. The Learning House used thicker stock than anyone else in their district. It made debt feel educated. It came yesterday, Nico said. Yesterday when? After you left for evening Q. You hid it. I delayed it. That is hiding with grammar. He unfolded the notice and laid it on the table between the heel of bread and the mending knife. Mara did not touch it right away. She read it upside down because there were some small humiliations a person could postpone for 3 breaths. Account review, Nico Venn. Outstanding Learning House balance, 118 marks. Payment required within 3 days to avoid sponsored placement review. Sponsored placement. A clean phrase. It meant the school would find a sponsor to pay Nico's balance, and the sponsor would receive a claim on his future work, his future learning, or both. The market loved a child with potential. Potential was just another thing that could be priced before the owner understood it. Nico tapped the paper. They said placement review is not the same as debt assignment. Who said? Master L. Master L wears shoes that have never met mud. His definitions are decorative. He also said sponsored learning can be an opportunity. Mara looked at him then. Nico's chin came up, defensive before he knew what he was defending. He wanted to be reasonable. That was the dangerous part. The market survived because it taught bright children to call a hook a handle if the handle was polished. No, Mara said. I did not say yes. You folded the notice instead of burning it. We cannot pay 118 marks. I can. His gaze went to her mouth again. Mara folded the notice once, hiding the amount. Then again, hiding his name. Then a third time because her hands wanted a job. Not with H12s, he said quietly. I have other categories. Sleep? Maybe. You cannot sell sleep and then watch me study all night. I can do many stupid things in a row. You have seen me. Mara. There it was, the version of her name he used when he wanted her to stop being funny because he was frightened. She put the folded notice into her coat pocket. You are going to school. You are going to listen to Master L say decorative things. You are not going to sign anything, agree to anything, smile at anyone offering sponsorship, or let a clerk scan your tag. I do not have a tag. Good. Keep your neck empty. He touched his throat as if a tag might have appeared there while they were talking. Mara softened because he was still a boy, no matter how sharply the city looked at him. Nico. I know. Say it. He sighed with the exhaustion of someone who had been parented by a woman with checklists. I will not sign anything. I will not agree to anything. I will not smile at sponsor people. I will not let anyone scan my non-existent tag. And? I will come home by 4th bell. 3rd. 3rd bell makes me miss computation. 3rd bell keeps me from dragging you out by your ear in front of computation. He considered this. 4th bell, and I bring you Master L's pamphlet so you can insult it with evidence. Mara should have said no. She saw the right answer sitting there, clean and useless. 4th, she said. Nico smiled just enough to make her regret loving him where anyone could see. After he left, the kitchen felt too large, which was absurd because it was barely large enough for a stove, a table, 2 chairs, and the damp smell that lived permanently in the wall. Mara counted the money in her wrist ledger. 31 marks available, 118 due, 3 days before review. No amount of careful toothbrushing would fix that. She put on her coat again. At the Proxy Hall, the late morning queue had turned ugly. Rain steamed off coats. Buyers complained under the front arch. Proxies crowded the sideboards, scanning categories with the hungry calm of people trying to decide which piece of themselves would be missed least. Breck's booth was open, which meant trouble or opportunity. With Breck, it was usually trouble wearing opportunity's hat. He saw Mara and immediately looked away. That was rude enough to be information. Mara stepped out of line and leaned on his counter. Breck wore a rust-red waistcoat under his rain-dark coat and had arranged his dockets into stacks so neat they looked dishonest. Then, he said without enthusiasm, Breck, dental is downstairs. I am expanding my professional horizons. Your horizons have blood on them. Dispute rate high. Always is with teeth. Buyers spend their whole lives ignoring their mouths, then get religious when someone else holds the brush. I need a category with weight. His fingers stopped moving. Define weight. 100 marks. That is not weight. That is a piano falling. Can you place me or not? Breck glanced past her at the boards. There is a fever opening in 2 hours. Common? Common enough. How many days? 3. No. You asked for weight. I need to function tomorrow. Everyone needs to function tomorrow. That is why tomorrow pays badly. Mara leaned closer. Breck. He looked at her then, and the quick little performance went out of his face. There is a sleep stack, he said. 6 hours premium. Buyer has insomnia, wants no dream residue. Clean paperwork, 42 marks before fees. No dream residue costs extra because dreams are where the city checks the books. Because rich men wake unsettled and think it is a defect in the poor. Put me down. He pulled a docket from the second stack, tapped it against the counter, then paused. The brass category board behind him clicked. Mara turned. The normal boards were cream, green, or gray depending on bodily risk. A black rectangle had appeared at the bottom, where no category should have been. It did not roll like the others. It opened one line at a time, the letters shining blue as if written underwater. Sealed assignment. Authorized proxy, Mara Venn. Breck said very softly, "Do not look at that." Mara kept looking. The board clicked again. Character, remorse transfer calibration. A few people nearby shifted, not because they had read it. Most could not see a sealed assignment unless their tag was named. They shifted because Breck had gone still, and stillness in the hall was contagious. Mara felt her tag warm against her throat. "Remorse is not a category," she said. "Correct," Breck said. "Excellent. We agree. Agreement is healthy. Walk away." The printer inside his booth woke with a ratcheting sound. Breck slapped one hand over the output slot. The machine kept printing. Paper crumpled under his palm. "Breck." "No." "Move your hand." "Venn, by the ledger, I am attempting to be a good person for almost 3 consecutive seconds. Appreciate the strain." The paper pushed past his fingers. It was black, thick, and dry. No market watermark, no buyer seal. Only a narrow blue line around the edge, and Mara's name printed in the exact center. Mara did not pick it up. Breck did not either. "If you touch it, the docket records contact," he said. "If I do not, it records refusal." That sounds like a design flaw. It sounds like a trap. The docket opened by itself. Mara had seen contracts unfold under seal before, but always after consent. This one spread on the counter like a hand. Assignment offer, remorse transfer calibration. Proxy compensation, 140 marks. Duration, 12 hours initial. Buyer, sealed. Transferred effect, sincere remorse associated with one irreversible act. Mara's mouth filled with the taste of metal again. For one sharp second, before she understood the words fully, she felt ashamed. Not embarrassed, not afraid of being seen at a bad counter with a bad docket. Ashamed, as if she had done something small and cruel and had been waiting all morning to be named for it. Then the feeling passed. Her hand had curled against the counter hard enough to hurt. Breck saw. Of course he saw. Brokers survived by seeing symptoms before they became paperwork. "You felt that," he said. "I felt my patience leaving." Venn. "It is illegal. It is impossible." That too. There are better reasons to walk away from a thing than the law not knowing what to call it. Mara read the compensation again. 140 marks. Enough to pay Nico's balance. Enough to buy 3 days of food after. Enough to stop the learning house from speaking gently about opportunity. Who sent it? Sealed. Sealed by whom? Breck gave her a look. If I knew who sealed the sealed buyer, it would be a very poor seal. Reject it. I cannot reject it for you. You can spill coffee on it. I like living indoors. The docket printed another line. Dependent obligation match found. Mara stopped breathing. Breck whispered, "No." The blue letters continued. Nico Venn, learning house balance eligible for immediate discharge upon proxy consent. For a moment, the hall noises thinned to the tick of the category board and the rain against the high windows. Mara saw Nico at the kitchen table, flour on his cheek, trying to cut bread with a mending knife. She saw his bare throat when he touched it. She saw the notice folded small enough to fit in her pocket and large enough to steer her whole day. The market did not need to threaten loudly. It had accountants for that. Mara stepped back. The docket slid after her. Not far. Just an inch, maybe less. Enough that Breck's face went the color of old paper. "That is not supposed to happen," he said. "Add it to the list." Mara turned toward the side door. "Where are you going?" "To be elsewhere while I still own the word. The docket will mark flight. Then it can learn to spell." She made it 3 steps before the brass bell above the sealed board rang once. No one else seemed to hear it. The black docket folded itself into a neat square, slid from Breck's counter, and dropped into the pocket of Mara's coat as if it had always belonged there. Mara stood very still. The blue light at her throat pulsed once against her skin. "Contact recorded," the board wrote. Then beneath it, "Consent pending." Mara put one hand over the pocket where Nico's debt notice waited and felt the black docket through the cloth beside it. 2 pieces of paper, 1 brother. She stepped into the rain before the market could offer her a chair.